please, interject if you want. So how does empathy show up for each of you individually in the context of your business and in the work you do every day? How does empathy show up for you as a leader? So.
Yeah, as a leader, number one, I'm here on this panel because I believe in a balance. It's empathy and strength, and I really love the balance of it, like with everything in life. Body and soul, personal, professional. Work-life balance is really work-life integration, not work-life balance per se, because the integration and fluidity, I really love that. So at work, number one, by engaging with my staff, there are actually a few of my fabulous team members here. I like to learn about them, to be more empathetic towards what their needs are. And by the way, empathy, I know the terminology soft skill. Is it a soft skill? What is it? How do we define soft skill? Maybe it's a soft skill. Depends how we see it and how we define it, right? So therefore, I don't put a definition around hard skills and soft skills. For me, empathy in the workplace itself, it's something very important because it complements everything we do. And I, myself, like to be also approached the same way as I approach actually everyone around me, because I always think how you treat others is how you wish to be treated yourself. I lead by example, be the greater person. It is, in some ways, in my first workshop, actually, when I moved to Nova Scotia, I chose emotional intelligence. I took a whole day, and then I realized I should take probably a whole week or a whole month. It's really a lot and overwhelming, and it's very demanding. So hereby I say I try it every day. I don't do it well every day, by no means. It depends how it's being defined, how it's being perceived and seen, and how I see it is possibly not how other people see it. I mentioned my different cultural journeys. So if you go to Israel, if you talk about empathy, it might be something entirely different than in Germany, than in the Netherlands, than in the United States, all the places, and strength as well. That's not strong, Ulrike, that's pathetic. Excuse me, I thought I was strong. So that entire intercultural component is another layer that adds to it and makes it actually rather complex. So I'm trying to be as self-aware as I can. How do you do it? I have an executive coach. I'm proud of it. Some people actually said, you need a coach. What's wrong with you? Nothing is wrong. It's actually, for me, it's great enforcement of what I don't know, what I have to learn. I'm all about developing, learning, and really don't take myself too personally and all things too personally and seriously. I see that I make a lot of mistakes along the way. My team and I work on it together. Last but not least, you can self-teach by maybe, it's not so much, I don't believe so much in only lectures and reading, learning, looking. It's like learning it while you do it every day and testing yourself. And I don't want to open a book and say, did I do section 2? Oh, I should have done section 4. It has to be also natural. And I feel personally it's ingrained in me just like my parents have taught me to be more empathetic in their view and then apply it, and then I'll learn to apply it in different cultures with different groups, individuals. It's different with perhaps youth, again, from different cultures and backgrounds. Seniors, again, we have a different spectrum of age, of ethnicity, religion. You need to really, it's a complex world. So when you talk about empathy, it doesn't mean the same thing to each person at each stage in your life. If I talk to my mother, it's something she's about to be 81, something entirely different than talking to my 21-year-old daughter. So these 60 years make quite a big difference in different cultures again. I find it complex, and again, I work on it every day, and it's for me a daily exercise as a collaborative and collective effort. And I'm always open to be reminded, Ulrike, you need to do better, and you tell me why. And I love constructive criticism. I never think I get it fully right, and if I do, I'm never there. Always 99%. I love to always work towards that 1%. To the rest of, we say, I'm Jewish in Judaism until 120, so I have a few more years to kick around. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Sara, how does empathy show up for you in your leadership style?
Empathy is something that personally I'm very deliberate about, and I think you have to be, and I do think it's a strength. There's no, and in some ways, strength and empathy are the same thing to me. And a few examples of in the work that I do, I have the opportunity, even within our workplace, empathy is embedded in our value system. So one of the values of the organization is actually compassion. And so, and the definition underneath that has empathy written all over it, but but how are we treating one another? So we have permission in the organization to be talking about that openly, and certain measures that we're trying to meet so that we can really focus on caring about one another as being the underpinning of everything that we do. That translates further into the work that we do in community and also the work that we do with donors and different organizations, where we're always talking about the importance of regard for others, and that's part of our narrative that we're trying to promote in our community. And one specific thing that we've done within our workplace from an empathy point of view, in terms of that fact that, continuous journey, always learning, we've developed something called a cultural humility plan. And that sounds like when I first heard it, I was like, what the heck is that? But when you think about that journey of cultural competency, of learning about other cultures, learning about other people, working really hard to understand and appreciate different journeys that different cultures and individuals have had, that you never become fully competent, culturally competent, but you can become, you can have humility in that cultural space. So we've developed a plan that all staff participate in, and also all board members are also invited to participate in, where we're going. And for example, last Friday was one example of that, where we went to the Black Cultural Center for the full day as a staff team, and we learned all about anti-Black racism in Halifax. And if you're not going to learn those things, then you're not going to be thinking about them. So it's deliberate about empathy as a culture, in terms of our corporate culture, our office culture, empathy as what are we promoting in terms of that notion of caring for one another writ large as a culture in our community, and then learning about how to be more empathetic and understanding of different actually cultures and populations in our community that we believe it's our responsibility to build that knowledge.
Beverley, empathy for you is embedded into your actual core business.
It actually is, but it wasn't necessarily embedded internally, which was the really interesting irony of all of it. And about 8 or 9 months ago, we made the deliberate decision we had to recalibrate culturally. And so the idea was to recalibrate around empathy, obviously. So our vision as an organization is to build the agency we've always wanted to be part of. And in order to do that, we really had to understand each other and have some respect for each other and what everybody else needs for that to be true for them. So it's been a really interesting journey for us as an organization. We also come from, in marketing, there are all kinds of different, different silos. We've got, there's public relations and marketing and digital and social media and creative, and often there are separate agencies for all of those things, but we call ourselves unbiased. And so we come from all of those different spaces, and so we also needed to understand each other and respect each other. And respect, and empathy isn't a word. I'll just say it really gets overused. And I understand what you're saying about how it has different meanings in different places, but it really isn't. It's about walking in somebody else's shoes, but it's not about how you would walk in their shoes. It's about just trying to understand where they're coming from. And it doesn't necessarily equate with happy and nice. I think it actually, it really is. It's just about understanding the business, the human environment where you're operating. And so that's a real, for us, that's what we're really trying to do, is really understand the human environment, but then asking everybody else in that environment to try and do the same with each other and with the business, so that everybody understands what the business is trying to achieve as well. And so one of the things we've done, and I'll stop talking soon because I could go on for hours here, but one of the things we've done is we've employed this thing called the social compact. And that is a commitment we made to each other about how we're going to behave with each other and how we're going to treat each other, and everybody has to commit to this social compact. And it gives you a North Star. It gives you something that everybody can point to. So if I'm not living up to it, somebody can, it gives everybody the power and the ability to look to anybody else in the organization, whether they're the CEO or a senior vice president or a coordinator or the director of first impressions, whomever, and call them out on it, because we actually have some guidelines. It's, you know, we need a little more respect here, we need to respect my time, or whatever that may be. So that's how we're starting to try, as we try to build the agency we've always wanted to be part of. We've tried to put some tools in place that allow people to understand what that means to each other and try and be really respectful of that.
So Andreas, I think social entrepreneurs is the new evolution within corporate social responsibilities, kind of moving from the three bottom line to people won't even go and join a company unless they have a social contract or they're building social capital. So how does empathy show up in your leadership in that space there?
Well, I think empathy really has all of you touched on. Really, it plays out. It gets a daily thing. I mean, all the work that I do and all the stuff that I've been a part of tangibly over the last, so it'll be officially in business for 4 years. I've been doing this stuff the last 8 years, or 8.5. Over the last 4 years, over the last 5 years, we've already engaged and impacted 2,800 people. And that's ranging from elementary, junior high school, into the university, so NSCC, St. Mary's, but also getting into the private, getting into kind of the other things, so working with community groups. We actually did kind of contract with all 4 of the provincial prisons. I've never been in prison before, but that was an experience, right? And speaking very much to that, kind of the contrast for how that plays out in kind of this work is, one day we were in a junior high running a session with students in a city school, the buzzwords, but focused on like what that transition is for them to head into high school. What are the pressures in their daily lives? What are some of the things that they're going through and experiencing on a personal, on an academic, opening up the space to have that conversation. And again, you have to create a space where people are going to be vulnerable, right? Again, it comes back to that culture, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's with a client, whether it's with whoever. There has to be that. It's kind of a social contract. All of you've spoken to that kind of in a corporate sense, but it's kind of like you have to meet people where they are, because everyone has their own strengths. But if you tell them, like I guess is our traditional model in the Western side, but if you tell people to meet you where you're at, they're not going to play to their strengths, right? They're trying to play to your strengths, even if it's their weakness. And I think being empathetic is understanding what where people are, and then allowing them, empowering them to kind of leverage those things. In a business sense, that puts you in a position to create a lot more value because you're playing to your strengths and then leveraging theirs and kind of building on that. Kind of the other element was, the day after we ran that session, and students, not to dive too much in the weeds, but this is a group of grade 9 students who are in the classes with each other every day for a year, right? To open up and be vulnerable with, as I'm sure you can all agree with it, it's not easy, especially for people that you know or your peers. So you don't want to sound weak. It's kind of one of the things we're talking about, but putting them in a position where they are vulnerable and they are feeling like they have a voice and they are valued and they are going to be met. Put some of the kids in a place where like they were literally sitting outside of the circle and they moved up into the circle with the chair to share. And then once we went around, you wanted to ask if you could go again and speak again, right? And one of the pressures that they spoke about was being one of the first people in the family to go to high school. If they graduate, be one of the first people to graduate. Right? So kind of to open up all the pressures, what that home dynamic is, that's a lot of weight, right? But for somebody to do that in a space where they're feeling like they're met, they're able to rise to that. And so I think it's important. I guess the back end of that is the next day we were in a prison. Very different conversation, but getting people who've been in prison for a range of things. And again, so I just turned 25 this year. So when I was in prison, it was, last year, so I was 24. I'm dealing with people that, the youngest are my age, all the way up, right? So very different lived experiences. So if I'm going in there without having been in prison before, without any background in the Justice Department formally, if I'm going in there demanding things or with the expectations on any of these things, I'm not being empathetic. I'm not valuing what their lived experience is, right? But we were able to go in there and have a position, unpack some very serious things to the point where the teacher who was usually in prison with them, I must not have been asking the right questions because I've never heard any of these things before. Right? Getting them to talk about what the pressures it is in daily life, and if you're doing things, what is the armor that you wear, right? But having some of these conversations puts people in a richer position to be able to leverage their strengths and those kind of things. So I guess in the everyday sense, I think the empathy is very important because it puts, as you all mentioned, right, it puts the person in the driver's seat. because there's opportunities to learn and grow and kind of do these things on the daily. And I think, you know, if you're able to get more in touch with that stuff, it just leverages itself and incorporates it.
So I think, you know, it's awesome. I think leadership, anyway, is tough. It's a hard place to be because you have to make hard decisions sometimes that your team won't necessarily know about or understand why you're doing it at the time. And one of the things I've learned in working with April's here from Simplicity Design, so false harmony is something I've really learned. So you can be the best leader, you can have all the empathy in the world. You know, everyone talks about their culture. They build their culture. They say it's whatever their culture is. And then they try to get, you know, they do workshops, whatever. But actually underneath that, because people are afraid to be vulnerable, is false harmony. And that's actually what can actually really undermine your intentions as a leader. So can you, anyone of you can volunteer, I'm not going to keep going down the line, can you speak to where it didn't work for you? Even though your best intentions were to be empathetic, but you also had to make a tough decision because, you know, leading in any organization is going to require that. How either it played out where you actually stopped yourself and realized the culture wasn't what you thought it was. And you did have to kind of really bring your empathy style leadership to the discussion or whatever the situation was, or where it totally backfired. I'm just curious how you navigate that world.
I have an example. When we were developing our social compact, and we were doing that as an organization, and an individual who was, you know, a really great talent in the organization. I was doing one-on-one meetings with people, and this person said to me, I asked for advice. Do you have any advice for me as a CEO? And this person said, yes, if leader X signs that social compact, nobody will believe it. Which was astounding for me to hear as a CEO, because we were chugging away, all ready to go with it, and I put the brakes on it right there, and we had to revisit how we approached the whole thing at that point. But that was that was one example, and I think, you know, people think they're being empathetic, or that they're, you know, and it's a hard thing to do. It's not easy. You have to, you know, you really have to keep a check on it pretty regularly. And people say that they're naturally empathetic, and yes, they are, but there are lots of days when, you know, you're more worried about what's happening in your world, or the goal you have to get to that day, or the client that you have to service, and sometimes it's hard to really understand how people around you are feeling, and then, you know, so to hear that about a senior leader in the organization was really tough for me, and, you know, I really had to rethink how we were going about it. Although what I couldn't do is let it proceed. I couldn't let this person sign it, or it would have, you know. So that's one of them.
I'm happy to share something, especially as the team is here. So we have a very open, transparent structure and leadership style, and so Digital Nova Scotia started very tiny, and I personally in the ministry, there was myself and another colleague, and suddenly, as of September, we exploded into 7 people. So that is a lot of growing pleasures and pains, as we call it, and we have to realize where there will be false harmonies and no harmonies, right? As you move along, you all need to learn together, because we did it actually a year ago when the team started to grow a little. We did the so-called disc assessment, and we did it with an external group. I wanted to remove myself slightly because I wouldn't want to be the person determining what's going on. I want to be part of the exercise. I want to be part of the team. So my leadership style is that I become part of it, to be as the employee and as the group, but I'm the one making recommendations how we tackle it. So then we learned quickly that we have very different communication styles and approaches, and what one person thinks, oh, I feel this way, another person saying, why are you feeling this way? It comes across as something entirely different, and we actually went beneath those where we thought we're getting along, but we're not really getting along as great as we could, and we were all honest. I think it's about honesty, and then realizing there are things we all have to work on. I'm thinking I'm really great in some situations and I'm getting along with people great, but I'm not getting along so wonderfully. But just by being that honest and saying, no, we want to have a very healthy organization, we're all together, let's be honest and then implement it. So it's great to realize under all these exercises that if you don't apply it and implement it, and then you need to have regular check-ins. So as the team grows further, you add more personalities, views. We have a demanding work environment, so stress can kick in very quickly. And then I try to be the balance in the middle, which can be a tricky one too, trying to understand what's going on while not really understanding for the mere reason I'm not always around. Nor would I ever say that I'm the ultimate goal in terms of determining what's going on, how you should feel, how to proceed. Let's do it together. And I remove myself again. I give guidance. I have such great confidence and belief in my wonderful team that I know that they can figure it out, and I would like them to figure it out as they wish to do it and come to me when it's needed. I don't want to be an interference. I don't want to be a fear factor. I don't want them to behave differently when they're around me and think, oh, there's the boss, I put on the slide. I try to really promote that culture of be yourself in front of me, next to me, in your personal life. And I lead by this. You see Ulrike in the supermarket or on the train, it's Ulrike here on the panel, it's Ulrike in the workplace, and it's that consistency and transparency. But we had to really be very honest and dig deep, and it's a little unpleasant and uncomfortable at times, and you learn a lot about yourself and go, oh, I'm not only as maybe as positive or as smooth or as this and that, but that honesty for me is the way forward in that open space where we're all on the same, we try to be on the same page and do it regularly. If you do it once and say, hey, check mark, we're done here, this is again, yeah, that is a consistency, absolutely, and a daily reminder and implementation, and be open to it, right? It will be rocky, and we grow again, we shrink, it's different dynamics, just that transparency, and yeah.
So Sara, thank you. So Sara, you did your MBA on kindness. So did you find any kind people in leadership?
So yeah, I did a qualitative research project looking at 5 different personal values, and they're all interconnected. Empathy, kindness, trust, authenticity, and forgiveness. And it's interesting, when you're sitting across from a corporate CEO and using some of those words, right? Like just to see how are people connecting with the language. And I'd say that it was a gender split, so there were male and female CEOs or senior folks that were speaking with. And one of the things that I found interesting was the feminization of language. So for me to be able to sit there and talk about kindness and feminization that could apply to a male interviewee as well. But someone might say, oh, I'm uncomfortable with that notion of kindness in the workplace, but I'm comfortable with do unto others as you'd have done to you. Like, well, it's not the same thing, right? But it's the bias against certain language that same thing with things of even forgiveness or well, yes, I can deal with moving on from something that did not work well, but forgiveness that doesn't connect with me. So I think we sometimes get stuck on the actual terminology, but we just need to be thinking about what does the terminology represent and how does that embody for you. So are there kind people out there? And yeah, that's the thing, the definition is so broad, right? Yeah, of course there are. Of course there are. And I think there's genuine people, there's people who are carrying a lot of stress and manage that differently. But it's about, I think, just being really in tune and thinking about how you want to show up every day.
So Andreas, we're in record low employment right now in Nova Scotia. We're trying all the time to attract immigration. More and more organizations are making deliberate final attempts to make sure there's a balance of diversity, and that's in all ways. Diversity in the broadest sense. And you're seeing more and more younger people. They're not necessarily just attracted because of the job or the money. They're attracted because of what you stand for, the culture within, which really is starting to lend itself to the world that you're in. And so if you could speak a little bit about that, because that to me is the empathy that we're talking about in its broadest sense actually fits in.
Very much so. No, I think on a lot of levels, I think there's a lot of opportunity by that. Just kind of mention over here, we said Sara, the piece about being intentional. I think that's huge because, like, just again, I think with all this stuff, like it's a daily thing. It's not a in our culture, like it's buzzword things, and so all of these pieces, it loses the value sometimes as you're thinking. Because I think the content is what is the richness. So it's not just what is it being empathetic, what is forgiveness as a buzzword, like what does that look like, and how do we practice that? How do we make that tangible for youth, or how do we make that tangible in the workplace? Because that manager, that person signing that's not tangible enough for the rest of the organization to say, okay, well, we actually care about that. So how do you kind of build those pieces and put things in perspective so it is tangible to take those actions? And I think that is a huge opportunity, just in the sense of, as you spoke about, like the rising, increasing things for youth. There's a huge shift just in overall focus kind of across the globe, but pushing for social and pushing for like social in the sense of like mission and vision and impact-based values across all fronts. I mean, all organizations and all industries now, because they are held accountable to the consumer, they have to build those relationships. And I think that looks on all the fronts like you have to be intentional, as you said, but it has to be common practice. You have to actually believe it, because at the end of the day, you can get a lot of money in the short term, but where the whole market is shifting, the pressures are a lot different. I think the long term and even the medium term implications in hiring and in retention in the workplace and in even growing and kind of building that culture. I think a lot of emphasis has to be on the actual infrastructure of these spaces and to the other side. Younger people coming in are very action oriented.